This is the first national conference of this type that has taken place in the United States since 1979. That reflects the fact that today we have more openings than ever to do this work for this beautiful cause of solidarity with Cuba that's now greater than ever. More opportunities to bring Cubans to the United States, for us to travel to Cuba, that our brothers and sisters that have come from Canada and our sister that has come from the UK have that privilege more unfettered than we do, but we're working on that. What does full normalization mean for this conference and for, I think, everybody here today? What that means is an end to all U.S. economic, financial, commercial, and travel sanctions against Cuba. That's one thing. It also means that Guantanamo Bay, illegally seized and held since the Platt Amendment in the 11? I think I got that right. To be returned to Cuba and to Cuban sovereignty, and that all these regime change programs, these projects of subversion, these Zunzeos and all this stuff that we know a little bit of them, that be ended, and that we fight for real normalization. That's what it means to us. The aim of this conference is to boost this work, the work of our beautiful cause of solidarity with Cuba, and to boost it in cities across the United States and Canada, to reach out to new forces, to young people, to trade unionists, to fighters against police violence and brutality, and for black rights and Latino rights and immigrant rights in this country, to reach out to the labor movement, to do all of that, and to bring our cause, which should be their cause, and their cause, which is our cause, into this, to build a united action. There are various action proposals in your packets, which everybody registered should have gotten, and others that will come up in the course of the plenaries and the workshops and the closing plenary session. We will have a discussion and debate and hopefully vote and decide on coming out of this conference with a common action program of specific concrete things that we can work on together and keep the momentum that we've got going in this conference going. And the closing plenary will decide on this. So I want to thank a few people that were really instrumental and groups in getting this conference going, and to give some special recognition to some of our special guests. And then I'll introduce our two chairs, and we will begin our opening plenary panel today. I would like to thank, many people have commented on how beautiful the materials and the website for our conference has been. I think it's set a real professional and productive seeking tone for our conference. And I would like to thank Cesar Sanchez, who really designed and did all the hard work to put that together. So, also, this idea originated a couple of years ago at a meeting of the National Network on Cuba that was raised by our sisters and brothers from ECAP, from the president of ECAP, Kenya Sarano, about how it would be great if we could have a conference like this in the United States. And I would like to especially thank all the hardworking activists from we've had a lot of different names over the years, but as we continue to broaden our work, but now the New York, New Jersey, Cuba Sea Coalition, which came up with and organized and worked on getting this idea and bringing it to fruition. And also solidarity committees from a number of cities: Hartford, Connecticut, Minnesota, Chicago, the People's Organization for Progress in Newark, the United Zulu Organization, which has branches all over, IFCO Pastors for Peace, the Canadian Network on Cuba, which has been extremely helpful in getting this going. And we have a number of brothers and sisters from Canada here, the National Network on Cuba, Venceremos Brigade, and I'm sure I'm leaving out groups, but you can see when you go on the website the broad sponsorship that we've been able to get. So, before I thank the comrades that are here, before we recognize the special guests, I do want to ask for a moment of silence to mention just two of the many folks, certainly since 1979 when we last did something like this, that have passed in the past year. I'd like to particularly mention the name of our sister Lynn Stewart, who recently passed, and of course our great brother and friend and inspiration, Brother Fidel Castro. So if people could rise for a moment of silence, and then we'll proceed. Okay, thank you. And we have a number of, we've been able to bring a number of Cubans from Cuba, genuine, authentic representatives of Cuba. And we're very happy. We even got a few visas, so, you know, it can be done. Of course, they were late, the U.S. Embassy, in issuing some other visas that we had invited in plenty of time that were given at the very last minute, like today, which made it really impossible for these other brothers and sisters to come. But we do have, and I want to recognize some folks. First of all, I'd like to begin by recognizing our longtime brother and fighter, great artist, president of the Union of Cuban Writers, novelist. For those of you from New York, I really recommend you check out his wonderful novel, A Cuban in New York, and that is Brother Miguel Barnett. I'd like to also recognize we have the new, but she's already jumping into the work, and our sister, Ambassador Anayansi Rodriguez, who is also here, to the United Nations. And also the Deputy Ambassador, Ana Silvia Rodriguez, also. We have a number of sisters from the Federation of Cuban Women Delegation that they have to let into New York because they're here for International Women's Month activities at the United Nations. And for many years, some of these sisters were the only folks, Cubans, that we could get into the United States to actually introduce to people in this country. And that is, I'd like to just introduce Sister Alicia Campos from the World Federation of Democratic Women, Sister Yanira Cooper, Sister Yanila Gonzalez, Sister Miriam Mendez, and Sister Maricel Gonzalez. And I would also like to give a special recognition also to our brother from the Cuban mission to the United Nations, First Secretary Rolando Vergara, who has, many of you know, who has worked with us from the beginning on this project. And a special recognition we're so honored to have, and you'll be able to hear him speak tonight, but he's going to be here for our opening plenaries. Our brother, the legendary Puerto Rican freedom fighter, Rafael Cancel Miranda. actually. Yanira Cooper. Okay. And also, another really, I think, deserves the status of legendary fighter. From the outset, when it was a lot harder to do this work in Miami for many years, when threatened with death threats and actual murders that have taken place. Not too far from here, a diplomat from Cuba was murdered in cold blood in Queens in the 1970s. Some of these folks, they tried to set up a bazooka, on the other side of the East River to blow up the United Nations to try to kill Che Guevara in 1964. This brother here has been working in that arena for decades, and now it's easier to do that. And so I'd like to also give a warm welcome to Brother Andres Gomez from the Antonio Maceo Brigade. I forgot to mention also that Brother Miguel Barnett will be speaking at the workshop on race in Cuba this afternoon. So I know it's a lot of difficult choices to make on the workshops, but this camera will be speaking at that. So let's have, did I leave somebody out? Okay. Let's have a productive, sisterly and brotherly, inclusive and democratic weekend. I want to thank you all for coming, and I want to introduce our two co-chairs, which is August Nimps, who's a co-coordinator of the Minnesota-Cuba Committee, a longtime Cuba Solidarity activist, professor of political science in Africa and African American studies, August Nimps, and Erin Feely-Nahum, longtime Cuba Solidarity activist, member of the New York, New Jersey Cuba Sea Coalition. Erin directs a domestic violence shelter, which I'd tell you where it's at, but I really can't, and which has hosted sisters from the FMC over the years. So Erin and August, take over. And, oh, wait a minute, I forgot to introduce. Yes, sorry. Well, I had to Also, last special introduction, our two sisters from ECAP, the Cuban Society of Friendship with the Peoples, Sister Sandra Ramirez Rodriguez and Sister Yanela Gonzalez. Thank you. Okay. Take over.
I don't know what there is to say after that. Thank you, Brother Ike. Sandra? August, aren't you going to sit? Thank you all for coming out. I think that this is a very memorable and a fantastic opportunity we have here today. I'm very grateful, I think we all should be, to Sahar Moazami, who is the student liaison for the president of the National Lawyers Guild of Fordham. She was instrumental in getting us this space. I think if you know and you have been involved in things that happen through the left, so to speak, we never have such beautiful spaces we have today. And this is an amazing opportunity. We're able to live streaming at picturethestruggle.org. So if anybody is interested in where to pick up the live stream, it's picturethestruggle.org. I'd also like to thank the Latin American Law Students Association, Universal Justice, and the Fordham University Student Bar Association. Without their assistance, this wouldn't have been able to happen. Thank you. August? Sahar here? Okay. Sahar, I'm sorry, Sahar is supposed to come and give greetings.
Hi everyone, my name is Sahar Mozami. I'm the current president of our Fordham chapter's National Lawyers Guild. And I'm Joshua Colon. I'm the president of Universal Justice.
And we all want to just welcome you here to Fordham Law. We are Fordham Business School and then later Fordham Law. We're really grateful to be able to be a part of this and for such an important and timely event. And we hope you all enjoy it as we know we will. And yeah, thank you so much for coming.
One of the oldest institutions of the Cuban Revolution is the Institute for Friendship with the Peoples. From the very beginning, the revolution recognized that solidarity was crucial for its survival, as well as solidarity with peoples and other struggles. And we are very privileged to have with us today the head of the North American section of ECAP, Sandra Ramirez. I had a very pleasant opportunity to meet Sandra a few months ago when she spoke in Minnesota to young people, and I can testify to the fact the feedback I got from her presentation was excellent. It was feedback, exactly the kind of thing you want to hear from young people about why they should look and think about the experience of the Cuban Revolution. So without further ado, Sandra Ramirez.
So, good morning, everyone. Dear our Cuban ambassador, Nancy Rodriguez, dearest and beloved friend Rafael Cancel Miranda from Puerto Rico, dear friend Andres Gomez, dear all, on behalf of the Cuban Institute of Friendship with the People, I would like to express our warm greetings to all of you and the gratitude for attending this national conference for the full normalization of US-Cuba relations, where you will debate on different issues in solidarity with my country. Many years have passed since an event like this one took place. The decision to organize this conference proves how active the solidarity movement in the US is, despite all obstacles and hostile policies. It also shows the potentials, creativity, and commitment of friends like you that are always standing by our side with the Cuban Revolution. We would like to thank New York Solidarity Groups for organizing this meeting. We know how hard they have been working in every detail of the program. But going directly to the main topic of this event, in my opinion, two important questions should be answered during this meeting. The first one, why is this meeting so important? And the second one, what else can we do in solidarity with Cuba? And I would try to give brief answers. And you, of course, have the possibility to give more answers during the workshops. By talking with friends of Cuba, we always explain the importance of having an inclusive solidarity movement where unity prevails. Those who respect the rights of self-determination of the Cuban Revolution, respect our people and our sovereignty, should be always welcome on the Solidarity Network. The diversity of sectors, backgrounds, ages, and cities is a way to strengthen the movement and open possibilities of getting to areas that have almost no contacts with Cuba. At different regions and in other countries, the Solidarity movement has considered that the campaign to lift the blockade must be focused inside the United States, because it's precisely the U.S. the one who imposed a blockade to us. Cuba hasn't imposed any hostile or restriction policies to any country in the world. We should multiply the actions to demand the return to Cuba of the territory illegally occupied by a U.S. naval base in Guantanamo, to denounce the illegal radio transmission to Cuba and the promotion of regime change program aimed to create subversive actions in Cuba. We call you to support with simultaneous activities the third days of actions against the blockade that is going to be held in Washington next September. As you know, The blockade is the main obstacle to our economic development, and it also has consequences on U.S. people. Though many solidarity groups have contacted members at the parliaments to raise their voices against this policy. By contacting your representative in your cities, explaining the effects of the blockade, you can also contribute to make this campaign wider and stronger. To reinforce the use of radio, television, print media, and social networks like Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, blogs, and others, we can counter the media campaign against Cuba. We should attract young people to this movement because their fresh ideas will help us to multiply the experience all of you have accumulated. But we should speak their language and use their codes on social networks. They are eager to know more about Cuba. Our ICAP Institute has been involved in many actions promoting the solidarity and friendship among all people. We have relations with more than 2,000 solidarity groups in 152 countries of the world. You can realize that restoration of diplomatic relations between Cuba and the United States has not shrunk those numbers. Behind those figures, there are thousands of friends that, with very limited resources, celebrate every victory of the Cuban people and stay alert to every destruction of our reality or every attempt of violation to our sovereignty. In Cuba, ICAP has been very active, welcome different U.S. delegations and groups that you have organized. They have followed up a program that permits them to get in direct contact with communities and social institutions. That's why a new association emerged here in the United States, and it's called RESPECT, which has now more than 100 member organizations promoting ethical travels to Cuba concerning respect for our sovereignty. The Caravan Pastor for Peace, led by IFCO, visited Cuba again, defying the announcement of the IRS to take their NGO status. It showed us that solidarity and friendship are not based on taxes, but by feeling of love. We also received the 47th contingent of the Venceremos Brigade, which traveled once again, challenged those restrictions. It's important you can evaluate the best way to encourage the participation on these two projects that were the first one that begin that relations of friendship with Cuba. We also express our solidarity to noble causes of the U.S. people, like the struggle of the Black Lives Matter, also the fight for the rights of the immigrants and Latin here in the U.S. And also, we support the struggle of the Puerto Rican people because we consider Puerto Ricans should be independent and free. And Cuba also celebrate the moment we have Oscar back in Puerto Rico, and we are just looking to May 17 when Oscar will be with the Puerto Rican people, and we hope to have him in Cuba probably soon. During these 2 days of the conference, we will debate on what we can do to multiply information about Cuba and draw attention on how much can be done. Under this U.S. administration, we have many campaigns to carry out and new challenges to face. Then, being guided by Fidel's legacy, let's work together. And thank you for your valuable support. We will overcome. Long live to the Cuban Revolution.
Thank you so much, Sandra. Just so we hope today now we will be able to have sharp discussion, debate, but we'd like to keep it civil. We believe, as Sandra had spoken, unity is the key to success. If we could keep all remarks, this will be a period of dialogue now, but if we could keep all remarks between 2 and 3 minutes so that everybody has a chance to speak. The chairs will be calling on people, so 2 to 3 times. Nobody will be called on until a second time, until everybody has had a chance to speak at least once. In your packets, there are resolutions and proposals which can be addressed here and now, as well as new ones developed. We hope that after the workshops and tomorrow, there will be plenty of time at the last plenary to call to action, take these proposals, and get some concrete plans in order to spread the word. I think the idea of social media is an extremely valuable tool, one at my age, which I don't utilize enough. I think I didn't learn that stuff growing up, but I know that the young people that we hope to engage and take on and carry on the fight will be able to help lead us in that direction, because social media right now is extremely important, because the bourgeois press often doesn't really give us the truth about Cuba. And many people, part of why we did this conference was to spread the truth. People don't really know, when Fidel passed, we saw how many lies and blatant misinformation was put out by the media. On the news networks, the lies was incredible. It is a chance now for us, people who don't understand or don't know about Cuba, to learn about it, and for all of us to raise our voices in unity and spread the word so that once again we can get rid of Guantanamo, we can return it to Cuba, and do all of the things that we're working on here today. So I think we should begin.
Given that in this stage of imperialism, where the United States, NATO, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, etc., right, so if we see what happened in Libya, where the United States will create the chaos and then report on the chaos and then say, oh, this is the Libyan government causing this chaos. Similarly in Syria. So given that the market is returning in limited forms in Cuba, how does this affect the question of Afro-Cubans as well as LGBTQ community in Cuba? And how can we preempt, the exploitation of, I guess, the effects of the market? Because Libya, Gaddafi bought the market in a little bit, and then there was chaos, and then they blamed it on him. In Syria, the same thing, and in Cuba, y'all have decades of resistance to this, but understanding that the media is going to play that fake humanitarian role, how can we preempt that, with real humanitarianism, and real Afro-Cuban and real LGBTQ community voices in Cuba?
Oh, there are many friends here that can also answer this question. I think so. The concrete situations in Libya and Syria are quite different from the one we have in Cuba. So we hope not to have those attacks directly on Cuba, but we work in our islands just to foster the unity between everyone, between the LGBTQ community, between the Black population. So, if you go to schools, you can find that we have black and white together in the same place. And every time in our country, we have developed a great educational campaign just to recognize the rights of the LGBTQ communities. And also, we are in an educational campaign to recognize the roles of the Black people in building the Cuban Revolution. So it's quite different also from the situation you have here in the United States. It doesn't mean that we have to overcome difficulties that we have, but I think the key element is the education that we have to continue fostering in our school, in our media, how we have to respect the rights of those parts of our people, of our populations. And if you compare it to the rest of the Latin American countries, I think we have advanced a lot on the rise of the LGBTQ communities. So they celebrate their activities. We even have members of to the municipal, we call it, it's not parliament, but a representative of the background who is part of the LGBT community. So to us, so they can be a decisive part of the taking decisions that we have in our country. So we can talk a lot about the black people in Cuba, but I think the Cuban Revolution have done a lot for the black people, but not only in Cuba. So we have a workshop that we will talk about even the role of Cuba in Africa. So where we went, not to take oil and not to take gold, just the only thing that we left in Africa was the blood of our sons and daughters. So I'm sure that you will have more information on the workshop, and I could give you even more information, but I invite you to go and participate in those workshops that we are going to have about the roles of the black people in Cuba. So even the president of the Union of Writers and Artists will give a small lecture today about that topic.
Barack Obama, as you know, was the first president, since the Cuban Revolution to reach out to establish diplomatic relations with Cuba. Now, Donald Trump is singing a whole other different tune, as you know. He was talking a lot of nonsense that he thought Barack Obama gave him too much. So I'm just saying, he hasn't been in office that long, but we're going to have to deal with this new monstrosity coming out of Washington, D.C. But I would like your opinion on how it's hard to predict the future. But I would like your opinion on it. What you expect, and we have to be ready for that.
This is an open discussion, an open panel, so would you like, whoever you would like to come up? You?
Does anybody want to respond to that question?
People want to speak.
I don't think I have the answer to that question, but I'd like to say that we're very concerned. My name is Isaac Seney. I'm the co-chair of the Canadian Network on Cuba, one of the co-chairs. And I'd like to say we have concerns in Canada as well. So when Fidel passed on, the Prime Minister of Canada, who has had this, whose father had a relationship with, a friendship with Fidel, tweeted, something that was fairly neutral about Fidel, that he extended his condolences to the Cuban people on losing their leader, and that Fidel had played a historic role. Then within that, what happened was then there was this massive attack from certain sections of the Canadian ruling class through the Conservative Party on Trudeau. And in the course of the discussions and the debate that took place in Parliament, the Canadian Foreign Minister made a comment that indicated that Canada would perhaps abandon its policy of non-interference. Well, I mean, I do think they interfere, but this policy of the public policy of articulating non-interference in Cuba, that they would play a role in transforming the political system, right? And so we were very concerned about that. So this is a major issue that not only affects the United States, but what will happen in terms of Canada, right? Canadians, as you know, are the largest source of tourists to Cuba. I think close to 2 million, if not more than 2 million tourists from Canada visited last year, okay? So, of 1 million. So we have a lot of tourists who come from Canada to Cuba. They've seen the Cuban reality, and whatever their ideological perspective, they've always gone away with a tremendous respect. So the concerns about what's going to happen with U.S. foreign policy towards Cuba, whether Trump will step back on Obama's track 2 approach, which is what I call it, and will Canada somehow fall into line with that? What will be the pressures put on Ottawa? These are things we're concerned about as well, right? And so that's why, for example, one of the things we spoke about, there's a proposal that the CNC is also co-sponsoring along with Vancouver Communities in Solidarity. They're part of the network as well, is this day of action leading up to the vote at the United Nations. We know that in leading up to this vote at the United Nations, we need to do a lot of work among unions, in the civil society, and even among our MPs as well, right? So there's a lot of work to be done. The US abstained last year. Will Trump reverse that? What will be the consequences for this? Are we going to return to a hyper-aggressive bellicosity of Washington, right? So these are some of the things I just wanted to address.
So I We can say what's going to happen under the Trump administration. You don't even know what will happen with you or with Cuba. But what I know is what Cuba will do. So I will continue trying to build our social project. We will continue defending our rights, our sovereignty, and the Cuban Revolution. As our president stated, so Cuba have the will to talk in a civilized way with the United States. So U.S. is our next neighbor, is just our next door. So we need, as a whole country, to live in a peaceful way with our next neighbor. But Cuba, we will continue building our revolution with Trump or without Trump, with blockade or without blockade. That's what I can tell you.
I want to raise a new issue. My name is Andrés Gómez. The issue of terrorism in order to achieve a normalization of relations between the United States and Cuba. It's a fundamental aspect of the policy of constant aggression by the United States against the Cuban people since 1959, a policy of state terrorism against Cuba. This policy, directed, financed by the United States government, that has recruited from the beginning the terrorists that have carried out these actions for the last, how many years now? 57, have resulted in more than 3,900 deaths in Cuba and have resulted in more than 2,000 physically incapacitated Cubans. That's monstrous. Monstrous. Fidel, in October 2001, pointed out what that meant in terms of relations with Cuba, between the United States population and the Cuban population. His deaths. And among the things he said at that time is that the death that have resulted from these actions, U.S.-sponsored terrorism against the Cuban people, equal the number of United States soldiers that have died or died in Vietnam, comparing the U.S. population and Cuban population at the time. Those terrorists that have carried out these actions, those that have survived, mainly live in Miami and Puerto Rico. They are alive and they're planning new actions. And they have had immunity by the United States authorities. In our case, one of our brothers, member of the Antonio Maceo Brigade, which I had, Carlos Muñiz Varela, was assassinated in San Juan, Puerto Rico, in April 1979. It will be 38 years next April, next month. No one has been arrested for that crime. No one has been charged for that crime. And the United States government, the FBI, fully well know who carried out and who paid for them. Nothing has been done. From our point of view, it is impossible to fully normalize relations between both countries, not only both governments, but both nations, both peoples, if these persons are not brought to justice and pay for their crimes. And that policy is not only condemned, but renounced. And it is in place, that policy of state-sponsored terrorism. And I'm bringing it up at the beginning of the conference so that you all will have it in mind when we discuss the things that need to be addressed in order to achieve full normalization of relations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm John Waller. I'm the National Coordinator of the Pastors for Peace IFCO Caravan to Cuba. Thank you. As we celebrate this welcome, very necessary conference in New York, we need to also, from the beginning, be thinking that to achieve change and to achieve congressional action in this country, we need to be reaching out to many other places, including the so-called red states of this country, to Little Rock, to Kansas City, to Des Moines. We all need to be thinking about that. For our part, IFCO is taking, in the second half of April, 6 speaker routes throughout the United States, 55 cities, 30 states, half of them Republican states. We've got a table outside. You can find out more information. If you're in New York, we can tell you about the event in New York for that caravan on April the 15th. But also, if you come from another city, come to the table and I can tell you about what we're doing, hopefully in your city this year, and if not, maybe next year. So again, think about the rest of the United States, including the non-liberal parts of the United States. And also on that table, we have information about our actual travel challenge to Cuba this July, which will be going to Guantanamo and Santiago. Thank you.
There's a generation in which John was the most popular male name, so I'm John McAuliffe. I'm the head of an organization called the Fund for Reconciliation and Development that's existed for 30 plus years and worked with Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia for many years before focusing on Cuba in the late 90s. I have a big foot in a whole other universe of people who are concerned about normalization, which is mostly Washington-centric. A lot of organizations, religious-based, WOLA, the Washington Office on Latin America, the Latin America Working Group. There's Now Engage, which is a business-oriented group. Some other groups that emerged during the Obama administration. And I think one of the crucial questions is understanding that there can be two kinds of equally legitimate motivations for normalization, for ending the blockade and returning Guantanamo. One is represented strongly in this room of long-term solidarity activism, and the other is of people who see it largely as an issue of American interests and American policy, and may or may not have the same sense about Cuba per se the way it is, but do believe that ending and this is what President Obama was exemplifying particularly, was ending a policy which did no good for either country. I think we're in an uncertain situation right now with President Trump. I think the country is in an uncertain situation, even if he's going to be President Trump for a long time, even to fulfill his first 4 years. I think it's the turmoil of the last week has not ended, and that may face us with a different situation. But assuming that Trump continues, the reality is reflected in a little anecdote of during the health care debate. Mario Diaz-Balart did an interview in which he basically was saying, oh, Trump will get my vote on the health bill if he fulfills the rhetoric that he spoke towards the latter part of the Republican primaries. That is, suddenly he became very hard line on Cuba towards the end of the primary when he wanted Florida and towards the election. The question is, why does Mario Diaz-Balart suddenly say this? During the Tillerson confirmation hearings, the Secretary of State hearings, Senator Rubio's primary concern was, would Tillerson urge the president to veto any legislation to end travel restrictions and end the embargo? And I'm sitting there watching, you can watch this still on C-SPAN, but if that was Rubio's primary preoccupation, Rubio has a sense of movement within the Congress, which is much stronger than I've had up to now, but does suggest the importance, whether it's red states or blue states, the importance of getting people to work with members of Congress and the Senate to see this not in solidarity with Cuba, but as in solidarity with American interests in Latin America, and in particular in its relationship with Cuba. The other thing that's complicated, if you get into the weeds on Trump, like Obama, the Cuba portfolio is not in the State Department. It is in a person's hands named Jason Greenblatt, who was Trump's counsel for many years and now has responsibility for sensitive trade negotiations, one being Israel and the other being Cuba. Jason Greenblatt was part of the Trump team that went to Cuba to discuss the potential of golf courses. So I think it's a very uncertain situation. The last thing I want to say is that I think that the other part of the equation that the Cubans can help us on, and nothing should be conditional, but I think the Cubans can begin to say, well, what would life be like if there was full normalization? And I remember when Mariela Castro was here for the Latin American Studies Association, she was interviewed by Betancourt on CNN. She said that one consequence would be that the logic of a single-party state was no longer there, that there could then be the possibility of other political parties. Well, that's interesting, and maybe it's just Mariela who's way ahead of everybody on a lot of things, but it may also be that in terms of the economy, in terms of the media, that there may be more things in the waiting.
Peace, family. My name is Tyreek. I am a Black Panther. I am a former member. I am a former member of the Black Liberation Army. This morning, when I got up to ready myself to come to this conference, I turned on the radio, and one of the first things that I heard on the radio was Governor Christie of New Jersey saying that he's going to approach the president, Donald Trump, and advise him that in his future discussions with the Cuban government, that he should also, one of the items he should have on the table is a matter of returning Assad Shakur to the United States. So I think that we should all be aware of that. And I would like to say that as a veteran Black Liberation Army soldier, that one of the things that we fought to stop was the United States visiting terroristic tactics on Black people here in the United States. And that was the case back then, years ago, when myself and Assad Shakur fought shoulder to shoulder. As you know, I was in prison with Raphael, Sundiata, and a few all the other political prisoners. But as I said, one of the things that we fought to stop was the United States visiting terroristic tactics on Black people here in the United States. And that is not something that they have left in the past. That is something that has continued down to the present day. So I would like the panelists to be aware of that and have that on the table as we go forward. Thank you very much.
Cuba has the will to talk with the United States, but without any conditions. So United States can't impose conditions to Cuba. And Cuba has had the right to give political asylum to the one we preferred or we decide, and it's not only recognized because Cuba says that, because it's recognized by the international law. So it's our right, and we will continue defending our rights. And in our conversations, there isn't any conditions. So we will talk on equals, and we'll discuss our main interest, and that is not our interest, okay?
It's really a pleasure for me to be here. Just a very brief comment, just following the idea that Sandra was telling. I think this process that has started after the establishment of diplomatic relations between the two countries has been based on that. Reciprocity, that means respect for each other's sovereignty and principal position, which is a very basic principle of this process through normalization of the relationships. And one thing which is unquestionable is our political system and the sovereign right of the Cuban people to exercise the right to self-determination. As Sandra said, is a right recognized by the Charter of the United Nations and in the international law. And as part of that is our right to preserve, as it is, of course, it is always perfectible, but to continue building our prosperous and sustainable socialism. We are a socialist country, and we will continue being a socialist country because it is the decision of the Cuban people. And to have one party, the Cuban Communist Party, is also an historical decision that was not taken by the way at the triumph of the revolution. It has more than 2 centuries or 1 century and a half. It was founded with another name, of course, in that specific historical juncture, but was founded, or the predecessor was the Cuban Revolutionary Party, formed by our national hero, Jose Marti, that realized that for the Cuban independence, the only way to achieve it, our goals, was to have all the forces that were fighting for our definitive liberation united. Just joined Cuban people has achieved what we have achieved. I mean, our revolution is there because we have managed to be united, and the conduction of that has been led by our Communist Party, that is the great force of our process. And our elections are not based on that. We have a different, there is not even, we have to know, I'm sure we all know here, there is not a unique model of democracy. It's recognized also by international law. The Vienna Program of Action that has been decided by 193 member states of the United Nations, including the United States, I say it very clear that there is not unique model of democracy, and each country has its sovereign rights to decide which are going to be his model of political, economic, and social model. Then Cuba has decided to have a socialist model, and we will continue building it with our own challenge that we are going to face, and we are there to face. And as Sandra said, I just want to reaffirm that, is that, of course, we are going to continue this process through normalization, but cannot be expected for us or from us that we are going to renounce to our principles position. And among those principles is to define our political, economic, and social system based on our own decision, based on our right to self-determination, and based on many other principles that has characterized the Cuban Revolution, which is internationalism, solidarity, and defend all noble and just causes of the world. That's our principles. Thank you.
Just to remind, this is Cuba's ambassador to the United Nations.
That's hard to follow. Mary Alice Waters, Socialist Workers' Party. The question of normalization, of course, is at the center of this conference, and it's good that this discussion begins, of course, right now. I think, of course, we all recognize that the victory that was won not in 2014, with the establishment of diplomatic relations and the release of the hostages that the U.S. government was holding, that is our Cuban 5 brothers, was finally won. But we should also remember what Obama explained at the same time, what the purpose of the new course was going to be. He said the old one had not achieved its objective, and now we need something new to achieve the objective. And the objective has not changed. It is precisely to overturn the Cuban Socialist Revolution, and that's what that's where the normalization question comes in. The United States government and the interests they represent is not for normalization. Normalization is a way of increasing the pressure on Cuba to change and to adopt and to open itself to, once again, to capitalist exploitation. I think it's very important for those of us who are part of the solidarity movement to recognize this and to recognize that our task here in the United States, which is the biggest and most important of all, is to keep our fire on the U.S. government and the interests it represents. There's a very easy way forward. Out now. Out now. There's nothing you have to do on Guantanamo, just get out. That's right. Just end the economic war in all of its forms. End it. Overnight. There's nothing more that needs to be done. And end all of the subversion programs that have been going on for decades and decades, and all other things will then there will be the road to normalization. But I think that this has to be part of what we're discussing here this weekend, and the clarity on this, the education on this, the understanding and reaching out to here in the United States to the broadest layers possible to educate on these questions. Thank you.
I would like to add to what Mary Alice has mentioned is why it's so important the work of a solidarity movement, because there is an illusion in some persons that they think that we have normalized the relation with the United States. They think that because now they can travel under people-to-people category, am I right, Bob Guile? And they can go individually to Cuba under this category. So it's easy now to go to Cuba, but they don't know. Sometimes we receive groups in Cuba and they didn't know, and should I travel to Cuba under the category, but your group have come here under the people-to-people category, and you should keep this in your records, because in 5 years, even the FBI or others can ask you about this trip to Cuba, because it's a still travel restriction. There are strict travel restrictions for traveling to Cuba. So U.S. people are not allowed to go there for tourist reasons. So, but there are people who think that they can go into to Cuba for doing tourism, which is not true. And the blockade is still in place. So it's important to explain that, because people think, no, I'm not going to express my solidarity with Cuba. So Cuba and the United States now, they have relations. There is nothing more to do on this, and it's not true. So we need your solidarity ever more than before, because people think that everything is solved, and it's not true.
I'm going to take a prerogative to ask a question. My name is Gail Walker with DIFCO, Pastors for Peace. I want to ask Bob Guile specifically, thank you, about something Sandra just said, travel. I know that there's going to be a workshop on respect, but I think that it really lines up directly with what Sandra was saying about the fact that there are more and more people that are traveling to Cuba, but we don't want just any old folk going to Cuba in any old way. So maybe just, I know that's broad, but you can, share some thoughts about what we can do as a movement to respect Cuba when we travel.
Well, Gail, we are having a workshop on this. Bob Giles from Morrisville.
We've been sending people to Cuba since 1979, several hundreds of thousands, actually. Everybody is going to Cuba right now, from the United States and increase around the world as well. There was a 35% increase last year of U.S. people going in all these different categories, and the categories are quite stretched in terms of their interpretation. So there was 650,000 Americans who went for tourism last year. This year, I just read in the Miami Herald, there are going to be 172,000 Americans who travel on cruise ships to Cuba. Cruise ships have their own dynamic, their own problems, their own invasiveness in terms of the countries that they're visiting. There are economic reasons for them happening in Cuba, but there's a responsibility that our movement has in dealing with the travel to Cuba. And Sandra referred to it before, and we're going to talk about it much more extensively in the workshop, in the Responsible and Ethical Cuba Travel organization called RESPECT, which we founded last year. And that is really to set the basis for the try to influence that we hope to bring to the travel community as such, that says that we respect Cuba's sovereignty and the will of the Cuban people to determine their own destiny without tourists making that decision on for themselves. And so our basis is to try to find unity, common ground among travel service providers, ranging from big providers to Pastors for Peace, to the Venceremos Brigade, to Insight Cuba, to 150 organizations which have now signed RESPECT's principles. I have copies of those principles, and I urge each of you to see them. They may seem like they're common sense to you. They are not, and they're violated all the time by people going to Cuba, by organizations which send them to Cuba, and that our job, I think, is to propagate and advocate on behalf of respectful, ethical travel to Cuba. I think we'll have a big influence by trying to do that. Thank you.
Hi. I don't know if this is actually a question. I'm just following up on your question. My name is Judy Sheridan Gonzalez. I'm the president of the New York State Nurses Association and an emergency room nurse. We have worked with Marasul. We've kind of used the travel restrictions in our favor to educate people. We're going to have our 4th delegation. We've worked with World Organization of the Right of the People to Healthcare through Marasul to go to the country, because I think, like the brother was saying about state-sponsored terrorism, how do people allow that? And how do people build relationships? It's by when the government demonizes leaders, dehumanizes a population, and castigates a country, when people actually have direct experience with that nation and with the people in that nation, it neutralizes the opposition and foments embracing of the system. So we've brought people there. This is kind of like a more grassroots micro piece of this whole conversation, through the healthcare system, and seeing how the healthcare system works and what the social system looks like, and recognizing and respecting the culture and the people of the country. We have members who never would have thought of Cuba as anything, going there and coming back thinking that not only has it transformed their understanding of the nation, but that they have a role and an obligation to transform our nation as well. Not to the extent, of course, overnight, but certainly around a single payer system, around democratizing our unions, looking at our government. And, we bring, it's a 40,000 member union, we're a small union. We bring 20 to 30 people at a time, but they then spread the word and become involved in the social movement here. And we think that through this kind of grassroots work, you have to win over the population that is not in this room. And that's been our process. I know that there's a lot happening, but if we can get more of that going on and have more organizations coming, that would be really wonderful. Thank you.
My name is Arnold August from Montreal, Canada. I've written 2 books. I've written 2 books on democracy, elections, political system, political parties in Cuba. And thus I follow very carefully and very closely what is being said in Cuba and elsewhere with regards to its political system. And I never heard Mariela Castro say that what is called the one-party system may fall to the side in order to have normalization of relations with Cuba. I never heard her say that. And I think it's very important that at this point, as we go through this conference today and tomorrow, amongst the many things that have to be very clear is that Cuba has no concessions at all to make with regard to their political system, because it is their political system. The United States has their vision of democracy and political parties. Cuba has theirs, and it is only up to them to keep it and also to improve it. I'll just complete this by saying that when John Kerry, former Secretary of State, raised the U.S. flag in front of the new U.S. Embassy in Havana in July 2015, there was a joint press conference between John Kerry and Bruno Rodriguez, which of course was never shown in the United States. And one very serious journalist, AP journalist, Ana Rodriguez, asked Bruno Rodriguez, foreign minister, how do you feel about democracy in Cuba? I thought his response was great. He said, I feel very comfortable with regards to democracy in Cuba. At the same time, we have to improve it as part of the overall improvement of Cuba's socialist system. That is also important. Those two aspects that he said, I love what he said. And this is up to Cuba to improve their own socialist system, their own political system.
My name's Tamara Hansen, and I'm the coordinator of Vancouver Communities in Solidarity with Cuba. I'm also on the editorial board of the Fire This Time newspaper in Vancouver, Canada. And it's a huge honor to be here with all of our great friends from Cuba, as well as all of you, talking about how we can improve our campaign for normalization of relations between the United States and Cuba, and really how we can bring an end to the unjust U.S. blockade on Cuba. A big campaign that we're working on in Vancouver, Canada is the 17th of the month, and you'll see in your packages we've put forward a resolution, and we're going to be really trying to get as many people on board with this campaign to do something on the 17th of each month towards the normalization of relations between the United States and Cuba and towards the full end of the U.S. Economic and unjust blockade on Cuba. So we in Vancouver have been having monthly picket actions in front of the United States consulate. We're raising our voices, as well as with our friends in Ottawa who are at the U.S. Embassy in Canada every month, raising their voices against the blockade. But we know as well that in Cuba they've added some amazing creativity to this campaign. They've been organizing flash mob dances against the blockade on the 17th of the month. Or in February they had papilotas contra el bloqueo, which means kites against the blockade. And they took hundreds of Cuban children out to parks and flew kites with messages of love and hope against the United States blockade on Cuba. And so I really want to encourage people to think throughout this conference about what we can do to add our voices to this campaign on the 17th of each month. I was interested to hear from Sandra if she has any suggestions for us on ideas and ways to make the 17th of the month more effective in the United States, Canada, and around the world, or if she knows of any of the plans of Cuban youth in the coming months for new creative ways to raise our voices against the unjust blockade on Cuba. So thank you.
So as Tamara says, at ICAB we are organizing every 17th of each month an actions against the blockade. And that was an agreement that the Solidarity Movement took at the Continental Meeting in the Dominican Republic, how to create actions against the blockade. And when they refer to 16th of each month, it's because on December 17, 2014, we have the three comrades, the three that were still in prison in the United States, they returned to Cuba. It means that every 17th of each month we can do actions. Now we have the Cuban 5 back in Cuba, but its blockade is still in place, and we can use that day just to follow some actions against this policy. So the youth organizations is going to celebrate in Cuba its 55th anniversary next April. And it's not only a moment to celebrate the anniversaries of the Union of Young Communists in Cuba, but also it's a moment to do actions to oppose this policy on social networks, on Facebook, on YouTube, doing what we call in Spanish tuitazo. I don't know how I can say that in English, but yeah, that's right. And we are trying to do that, and we just call you to participate in this tuitazo and just to post your ideas, your actions. What are you doing in your cities? And your interviews in your community radios, at the university papers. So everything can be also distributed on social network. Of course, some prefer not to participate at flash mode, but others, they would like to be part of that. So, and for example, in Miami, and I would like to acknowledge that, so every 2 months they organize a caravan of cards. They just make a great noise in the main streets of Miami, asking or demanding the end of a blockade. This is a show of what a city is just doing every 2 months. Am I right? It's every 2 months. But then you can decide what other things you can do in your cities. So in Cuba, we will continue during tuitazo, and there is another action that we recently did at ICAP. It's that we participated for the first time at a webinar, and with the National Network in Cuba, and some of you took place at that webinar, and that one was dedicated to the fate of having a U.S. naval base in Guantanamo. Because if you Google Guantanamo, what they will appear immediately is just a prison and the naval base. But no one refers to what we have in Guantanamo. It's a Cuban province, and that's the work of a Cuban revolution there. So we have a Caimanera municipality just at the border of a naval base, and we have there the result of the social work projects of Cuba. We have the infantile mortality rate in Caimanera is 0. So we have a university, we have a medical faculty in Guantanamo. So there are many things that we have to show of the Cuban Revolution doing in Guantanamo. It's not only the naval base. So, and that's also important, because everyone in the world, when they mention Guantanamo, they just think on the prison. And of course, this is not Guantanamo. So there are many more things that we can do. And so webinar was a show of what we can do together. So, and now we are in a very conditions, even at ICAM and probably in other organizations, and we can communicate directly and participate in video conference like this one.
My name is Ana Silvia Rodriguez. I have to put the Silvia because if not, we are two Ana Rodriguez. I am the Deputy Ambassador of the Permanent Mission of Cuba to the UN. I only want to underline what Sandra said and our sister from Vancouver also mentioned. And because this moment, it could be a very deceiving moment. People could think because we established relations with the United States, that things now are okay. So, you know that the process of normalization of the relation between Cuba and the United States is going to be a long process, because our differences are huge, and there's still the need, and this is the importance of this conference, the importance of your work, that we need to continue to fighting against the blockade, against in favor of the devolution of Guantanamo Bay. We need to convince people that yes, they establish relations, yes, but we need to continue pushing the government of the United States to lift the blockade, to return to Cuba his territory, because it's the will of the Cuban people. And the work that you have been done is very important, to spread the word, to talk with the people, to avoid the demobilization of the solidarity with Cuba, because people could think that because we established relations, everything is okay. So this is important of the conference, and I encourage you and I thank you, you to continue to this fight again in favor of the Cuban Revolution and in favor of our just demand. Thank you.
I'm Sobukwe Sakura. I'm with the All African People's Revolutionary Party. My question is that I think there are, first I'm going to make a quick statement, and that's just the question about normalization. I think the normalization that has taken place has something to do with the solidarity in the region that took place, the struggle, the strength of ALBA, the ability to coordinate CELAC. Those were steps forward that put pressure on the United States. My question is how important is it for this solidarity movement to have, with Cuba, to be extended to the forces that have created the need for normalization or the fight back that the U.S. has to make, like the solidarity that we need to have with Venezuela and Bolivia and the places which are under attack by the U.S. also. How important is our solidarity movement and the normalization process that we keep up those kinds of presses to build more solidarity within this region?
Yeah, that's a very important question. Right before we're going to take, because we're getting towards the end, we're going to take a speakers list, questions of people who want to ask questions. But right before that, I just want to acknowledge the presence of two new attendees, and one of them is Steve Kramer, who's Executive Vice President for 1199. And 11, also Amiri Baraka. Amina Baraka, wife of Amiri Baraka, who's also in attendance with us.
I just wanted to point out that there are action resolutions in the packet, and I'd like to speak to a couple of them. Obviously, an International Day of Action would be really important. I think they're talking about October in the resolution. I would certainly support that. And then the other one is organizing tours of Cuban speakers. I organize a forum that's gone on for about 6 years now in Troy, New York, called the James Connolly Forum. We got a couple people in this audience who actually spoken there. I think social media is great, but I think that face-to-face conversations are really critical, and we've got to promote that. And our forum series has worked quite well, and I encourage other people to invite people to their communities and have that kind of face-to-face discussion. It really makes a big difference. Thanks.
Good morning. Good morning. My name is Omari Musa. I'm with the DC Metro Coalition in Solidarity with Revolutionary Cuba. And I'd like to welcome my friends who just came in from DC to participate in this conference as well. Well, everybody's my friend. But I wanted to just raise one thing. The comments from Cuba and others have spoken quite eloquently, I think, on the question of what is the target and goal of what we're trying to do here. It's not to negotiate with the United States government. Our plan is to put the fire and the heat on the United States government around the three demands that have been raised by the conference. It's not complicated. All the United States has to do in Guantanamo is to simply evacuate all of the U.S. forces and leave. It's not complicated. In order to stop the blockade, they simply have to stop the blockade. It's not complicated. In order to stop the anti-Cuba activity that the United States government organizes day after day after day, they simply have to stop. That's what we must demand. That's what we must demand. Now, look around you and you see who's here. There are millions of people that we want to influence around these three demands. So we have to come out of this conference, in my opinion, as clear as possible who the enemy is and who our ally is. Our ally is the Cuban revolutionary fighting people. Our enemy is the United States government. That, too, is not complicated. Now, I want to just conclude with one thing. Somebody mentioned Guantanamo earlier. There's a workshop on Guantanamo I urge all of you to go to. to begin to use it as a thing to educate people about what really goes on. It is not just a prison, bad as that is. It's a seizure of sovereign Cuban territory by the United States government and keeping that territory against the wishes of the Cuban people. That's not complicated to explain. That's not complicated to explain. So what I urge us to do here is to discuss. If it gets a little sharp, that's okay. A little sharp discussion is not bad. But we want to be clear on what our demands are and who the enemy is, and focus our attention on the U.S. government and not be waylaid to discuss some other things. So that's what I think the conference is for, and I urge everyone to deal with it on that level and get as clear as possible so we can leave this conference and win over other people to the demands that have been raised at this conference. Thank you very much.
I just want to welcome the Mayor of Newark, Carrasco for being here.
Hi, how you doing? My name, again, Nino Brown with the Party for Socialism and Liberation. So in trying to influence people, you know, I mean, I'm 26, and a lot of the people that I organize with are 18 to about 26, 34 maybe. And, you know, they show me these videos of like, you know, what about the ladies in white in Cuba, and this new artist that I heard, Tania Bruguera or something. And, you know, I mean, I know of the past, like, subversions in CIA and USAID and NED, you know, attempts to enact regime change in Cuba. But, like, winning people over isn't as easy because they have these, you know, these proponents of regime change, whether they know it or not. So my question really is there anywhere I can go to, or someone can clarify, like, you know, what is the situation with these, you know, so-called ladies in white, or this artist, Tania Bruguera, and then is there a role of, like, studying Marxism, Leninism in Cuba, or is that, like, a part of the solidarity work that we do here? Because, you know, I mean, I teach kids, students, and I mean, I try to spread Marxism in any way I can. That's really my question, just how do we combat, you know, these people who may be doing the work of the U.S. government, but they may not even know it. I don't know. Or they may know it.
Have you been to Cuba? You have to go to Cuba. That's the first thing you need to do.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I'm not
That's
trying
what
to-
I would like to invite him. I would like to invite him to go to Cuba, but I will give the floor to Janela.
First of all, my name is Janela Gonzalez. My first time here in United States, New York. Thank you for receiving me. It's a pleasure to be here, but to answer your question too. But anyways, I'm going to invite you 2:15 to participate in the workshop, but I am and another person from Cuba and United States. This is not to represent only one person. They not represent the Cuban population, the Cuban young people there. The most important thing, the people defend our sovereignty, our political system, and the social system here in Cuba. She don't represent the person that they are against our government. So when we're talking about solidarity, when we're talking about our system, our society, you can just look at me. I'm woman, black, and Cuban. That's our main thing.
My name is Maritzel Gonzalez. I am a member of Foreign Affairs Department of the Federation of Cuban Women. Well, in order to know in general, here the Cuban delegation is are included, all of us, women. Women from all sectors of the society, okay? And that is why I would like to explain that according to the women that the young men here spoke, well, they are not, as Janela said, they are not represent the population of Cuba, I mean, the women population of Cuba. Because, for example, my organization, the Federation of Cuban Women, our organization, a group, more than 4 million women, that it represents more than 90% of Cuban population. So all of that women that are affiliated at the FMC struggle and contribute and work so hard for the advancement of women in our society. And we do that totally volunteer. So we don't receive money from any other organization or from any other government as that women's doing. So we just call that women mercenaries. That's right. Because they receive money from other group, okay? It is just what I just would like to explain. Sorry for my English.
Good morning, brothers and sisters. My name is Howard Ehrman. I'm from the Chicago-Cuba Committee. All of you who are interested in the question, which I think we need to really expand to have success in bringing down the blockade, return Guantanamo, do normalization relations, is the question of how do we expand the concept of mutual aid and solidarity. Why is it in the interest of millions and millions of people in the United States to bring down the blockade in solidarity with the people of Cuba? I think we've been doing that for 45, 50 years, but we really need to kind of step on the gas and expand it. In the workshops we're having, not to steal people away from the other ones, on the food and energy revolution in Cuba and on medical internationalism, this will be the focus of those two workshops. Thank you very much.
We'll get a last comment too from Sandra, and I just wanted to let everybody know there are more than 160 people who are here in our meeting.
So first, I would like to thank all of you for coming to this first part of this meeting, and to acknowledge the presence of the mayor of Newark, Ras Baraka, here with us. And I think we have had good questions and also good points, and we are going to have excellent discussions on the workshop that we are going to have in the afternoon. And I would like to highlight that by defending Cuba, we are also defending Venezuela, and we are also defending Bolivia, and we are also defending Ecuador. So we need to defend those countries that are part of the ALBA organization. So they are now the object of great media campaign, especially Venezuela. So by standing by the side of the Cuban Revolution, we are also by the side of Venezuela, Bolivia, and Ecuador. And we also need the support of this solidarity movement toward this country. And we hope to count on your support on this. Cuba is not only receiving solidarity, but we are also offering our solidarity to these countries and to their battles, the causes that they are defending. Okay? And I hope we can see you at the workshops again.
Thanks very much.